Syncretism? What's that? It means I'm eclectic.
Bell Chimes In, Episode 4. Let's talk syncretism.
Syncretism is a word that's often tossed around by Taoist religious scholars, and that's because Taoism as a religious practice, and also as a magical practice, is considered syncretic. Syncretism is the act of reconciling, integrating, synthesizing, or just bringing together two disparate ideas or two perhaps even oppositional principles and practices, especially as it would pertain to your philosophy or your religion. If you observe Taoist occultism, you'll find that practitioners work with Ganesha, Hindu deities, and of course Buddhist mantras or dharanis, recite sacred Buddhist texts in their rituals. And as you leave the mainland, where Chinese diasporas begin to assimilate with cultures outside of the mainland, Southeast Asian native cultures, or even Western cultures, Taoism has even come in contact with Christianity and Islam. You're going to find that Taoist occultists will merge their spellcrafting with other religions and other pantheons from the local lands that these Taoists are now residing on. I think the best way to explain this is to divulge the personal experiences of those who are sensitive to either celestial or demonic energetic frequencies. The precise way characteristic landforms in a geographic location come together with the heavens above that area and the subterranean planes below that area of Earth come together to create a unique signature. And when your sixth sense or psychic sense is sensitive to those signatures, then you do pick up on what the local sensitives or empaths have been picking up on all along. Do you kind of get what I mean? Okay, probably not. Let me try this again. Let's say you're a sensitive, an empath, and also as a person, you have no apparent ties, for this hypothetical, to indigenous cultures of Hawaii. If you really are a sensitive, then when you visit, say, the big island of Hawaii, chances are you're going to pick up on the unique energetic signature of that land that the indigenous cultures have been calling Pele. You're going to feel quite strongly the presence, power, and magnetism of Pele. You need to give that energy that you feel a name. The locals, well, if you hear them call that energy Pele, then you adopt that vocabulary. So long as your 2 feet are connected to that island, you feel Pele, you feel that energy, the locals have told you, and call Pele. So again, you adopt that language. You are called to then honor Pele. Perhaps if truly, though, you just don't have personal ties to Hawaii, then after you leave the island, perhaps that feeling or that connection to Pele is going to fade away. But while you are on the island with your 2 feet planted on the big island, you're going to feel that energy coursing through you, that connection to that particular celestial energy that, again, you've come to find out that the locals refer to as Pele. If you venture through Japan or Taiwan or parts of China where the lands haven't been ravaged by industrialization, where people have built and lived harmoniously with the natural lands, then again, chances are really high that if you're sensitive, you're going to feel the presence of those land spirits, and regional Chinese folk religions will have given names for those land spirits. You'll share in their rituals and ways of honoring those spirits with the names that the locals have been giving those spirits for centuries. When you leave the realm of social politics and civil discourse to close your eyes and just feel energy, then syncretic religious practices is the most natural and foreseeable thing in the world. In the world that we live in today, we can't ignore the influence of the internet. Our social network has been a parallel universe to the physical communities that we live in. So exactly like what I just talked about, when you traverse to different physical regions of this world, when you traverse the world of ideas and ideologies, and even if it isn't the internet per se, even through books, just any realm of ideas, those who are sensitive are going to pick up on these energetic signatures. And because we are the way we are, physiologically, different sensitives are going to connect to different signatures differently. Okay, so what did all of that have to do with syncretism? For so many deeper psychological, psychic, intuitive, and emotional reasons, each of us have different preferences and different leanings, right? Your favorite color is not necessarily going to be my favorite color. Your favorite flavor ice cream might be the one I can't stand, or we might have two things in common but two other things in dissent. We all understand that that's totally normal. So, why all of a sudden is it any less normal if we see religious doctrine A to Z and don't agree with every single point of that doctrine in its order, A, B, C, all the way down to Z? Maybe we really vibe with A and B, but X, Y, and Z makes no sense to us in this particular religious doctrine. However, if X, Y, and Z make no sense, then the bigger spiritual questions that X, Y, and Z of that particular religious doctrine had answered are now for us unanswered. We now have to go seeking those answers elsewhere. What if another religious doctrine or philosophy of life is able to fill your void and answer those questions in a way that makes you feel whole? So you take A, B, and C from one religious doctrine and X, Y, and Z from a different religious doctrine, put them together in a way that brings you a sense of closeness with deity. And that, my friends, is syncretism. To be eclectic is to think for yourself. It's saying, okay, I'm going to follow my own intuition and not accept any doctrine, A through Z, intact, just because some authority figure told me to. When you think for yourself and follow your inner voice,
That part of you inside that's Shen and your inner connectivity to deity, which is part and parcel to deity, concepts we talked about in episodes 1 and 2 of this series.
then you're more likely to achieve transcendence, to strike a really powerful connection with deity or that collective universal energy we associate with deity. Why? Because you're accepting the truth that one size doesn't fit all, and what's truly unique about you isn't your personality or even life experiences or what your likes and dislikes are. What's truly unique about you is the precise algorithm of your connection to deity. I'm of Taiwanese descent, but was raised and lived my whole life in the United States, and more specifically within the United States, California and New York. I've had extensive exposure to Mahayana Buddhism, occult Taoism, or Taoist occultism, Western forms of occultism, Western mystery traditions, Western forms of divination, and I also spent a large part of my childhood assimilating into a Presbyterian or Christian church. So that specific pattern of background will yield a very specific pattern of syncretic religious practice and personal philosophy. It's going to be eclectic because my physical body and my mind, my education, and my social interactions have been eclectic. I've also traveled extensively and shared religious experiences with many different cultures and societies and read a pretty diverse range of books. And the only reason I'm mentioning that is to make a point. Every interaction I have, and same with you, whether it's a social interaction or an intellectual one based on knowledge and education, something of what I've interacted with is absorbed into me. And if it's a particularly compelling interaction, it becomes a religious experience for me and therefore becomes integrated into my religious observations. For anyone who doesn't stay in one place for the entirety of their lives, or who doesn't single-mindedly stay sequestered within one homogeneous culture, who has zero experience or exposure to the world beyond native familiarity, for these people, staying within a single lane of just one religion just doesn't make a whole lot of sense some of the times. In fact, it'd probably be unnatural. It would feel unnatural. What's a lot more natural and intuitive is for your religious practice to follow the twists and turns of real life, of all that your mind and body gets exposed to. What I admire about Taoism is that this particular religion has acknowledged that human condition since the Zhou dynasty, which is around 1000 BC to 250 BC. And that's why religious scholars, when they talk about Taoism, also have to talk about syncretism. That's because Taoism, by its fundamental doctrine, is eclectic. So, what do I think about eclectic religious or occult practices? What if you blend facets of Western ceremonial magic and Eastern Taoist sorcery or esoteric Buddhism together? I think if your personal experiences and resonance are such that you connect deeply with these particular combinations of religious doctrines and practices, then it makes all of the sense in the world to be syncretic with your practice. Can you venerate a god from Pantheon A and a goddess from Pantheon B and have these pantheons be on the two opposite sides of the world? If I'm chiming in here with my perspective, then the answer to that question is going to be yes. Not just because you literally can, but because based on your very particular pattern of life experiences, what you're exposed to, what resonates with you, karma, and even the ideas and bodies of knowledge that you've chosen to absorb into you, your unique key to accessing deity might just be the collective petitioning of a god from Pantheon A and a goddess from Pantheon B. It might not be for me, it might not be my key, but it is going to be your key. And that's because you and I have different karma and different life experiences. You know what? I'm even going to double down on that perspective. My perspective is one that I can say with confidence is one arrived at after exhaustive and thorough due diligence into many counterpoints and oppositional perspectives, as many as possible, and employing a balanced methodology of both logical reasoning and intuitive feeling. And from that, I've arrived at this conclusion that became my perspective. So, with every last shred of conviction that I have, I'm going to, like I said, double down and go so far as to say I'm right. Look, I've listened to the counterpoints and the counter arguments for why syncretic religious practice is considered wrong. And those who argue against an eclectic spiritual practice is their arguments are either one, to throw superstitions against the wall until something sticks, or the rebuttal is basically because I said so. That's neither rational nor intuitive. It's just prejudiced and dogmatic. Formalized religion absolutely has its place in society, and we need it. Organized religion is needed for the masses, but syncretic religious practices, that's the path of the independent seeker. Okay, what if, let's use a hypothetical here. What if someone incorporates Kuan Yin, Guan Yin Pusa, Kuan Yin into that person's private religious or esoteric practice in a way that I, in my own opinion, based on my personal connection and work with Kuan Yin, I opine, or my opinion is that it's wrong. It's not in line with the spirit of Kuan Yin. Okay, because I am a flawed human being, it's going to upset me, of course, especially if that person is a public figure and is doing this on a public platform and misleading whole bunches of people. Yes, because I'm human and have human emotions, it's going to piss me off in my stupid little corner of the world. But if I take just one hot second to think outside of myself and to just be a bit more objective, cool headed, and try to intuit whether that person's heart is in the right place, then I think the only final verdict that one can reach is to say, live and let live. The fixation with reconstructing the past and correlating authenticity with history, or even more specific, the color of your skin or even your DNA, is a fascinating conversation that I think will unduly prolong the length of this video. But the human psychology behind that to me is fascinating, so I think I'm going to be revisiting this topic in a future episode. What I want to say is this. Mimicking what someone did or how someone was thinking hundreds of years ago, even thousands of years ago, isn't authentic if that's not what you feel in your bones. Practicing what you feel in your bones, now that's authenticity. So if your relationship with Kuan Yin doesn't necessarily mirror my relationship with Kuan Yin, and maybe doesn't even necessarily align with historically documented scriptures and the mythology of Kuan Yin, if the nature of that relationship is what you feel in your bones, then I say slam the door shut on the naysayers and keep doing what you're doing. But I will probably still criticize you because imperialism, post-colonialism, social studies, critical race theory, privilege, and politics, but still, just slam the door shut on the naysayers, even if the naysayer is me. What about blending tarot and the I Ching, or Taoist occultism with the Western four alchemical elements, or Celtic Wicca and the Eastern Wuxing, or five phases? Feng Shui and Western ceremonial magic, Zhangguo Lao and Hecate, or Hoodoo and Theosophy, or Taoist magic and Catholicism, Palo and Korean shamanism, Islam and Chinese folk religions, which, by the way, in real life actually happens in parts of northern China because history and culture, the Kabbalah and traditional Chinese medicine. Can we do any of these? If and when practiced within the scope of sincere personal spirituality, based on what resonates with you most powerfully, again, what's in your bones, then that is in line with the fundamental philosophy of Taoism, even when it isn't Chinese and isn't even per se culturally Taoist. Taoism emphasizes seeking the Tao. The Tao is the path, and the path is a body of knowledge, of teachings and wisdom. It is the Tao, or generically the path, and not a named path, not named like other religions, because the whole point is we each are going to walk a different path. Your Tao will be different from my Tao if we truly are seeking the Tao.
Okay, I shared with you my thoughts. Now let's talk. Conversation is education. Are you syncretic with your religious practice? Do you consider your path to be eclectic? It's your turn to chime in.